Hello, y'all, and welcome back. Spring break is wrapped up here in San Antonio. As I'm recording this, it is my birthday. My daughter greeted me by saying, "Happy birthday, Daddy. You are so old you were friends with Adam and Eve, but they didn't put you in the Bible because you're too cringe." So there we go. I've been properly roasted. We're done with our unit on ancient philosophy, but before we move into ethical theories proper, what I want to do is spend a module, a section, on what I consider to be the most interesting single question in the history of ethics. I don't think it's the most interesting thesis, maybe not tied to the most interesting thinker, but the most interesting question. And I'll introduce it this way. Aristotle, in his Nicomachean Ethics, divides human beings into four levels of virtue. Four levels of virtue. At the bottom, he has what he calls the vicious person. Now, right away, vicious for Aristotle does not mean what it means for us. So vicious in modern English means nasty and aggressive with a hint or maybe more than a hint of physical violence. That's not what it means for Aristotle. Vicious here is just the adjectival form of vice. So if you are lazy, if you make poor choices, if you're bigoted or biased, right, you're vicious, characterized by vice in this sense, even though you might not be nasty and aggressive or violent. And the vicious person for Aristotle is characterized by desiring bad things, desiring to do morally wrong things, and doing them. So they are untroubled, as it were, by good or virtuous thoughts. Fairly straightforward archetype. A level up from the vicious person is what Aristotle calls the weak-willed person. The Greek term for this, which is often employed in contemporary literature, is Akrasia. The phenomenon is Akrasia, again coming from the A, the alpha privative that we've seen several times already in this class, and krasia from the Greek word kratos, which means power. So this person, as the title suggests, lacks power. So they're conflicted in their desires. Part of them wants to do the right thing, and part of them wants to do the wrong thing. But because they are, as their name implies, weak, they give in and they do the wrong thing. This is the weak-willed or Akrasia person. The next level up is the self-controlled person. This person, like the weak-willed person, is also conflicted in their desires, but unlike the weak-willed person, they are strong, and they hold out against their bad desires, and their good desires overcome their bad desires, and so they do good. This self-controlled person is also known as the encratic person because they have the kratos or power in them. Now, for most of us, that's as high as you could go. Not only is self-control a virtue, so if you're characterized by self-control, you would be virtuous, right? But it's one of the big four virtues, along with courage, wisdom, and justice. So you'd think, how much better could you get? Well, Aristotle, in true Aristotle fashion, goes a level higher, and he says there is a person who he unsurprisingly calls the virtuous person, just virtuous, full stop. And this person, as you can infer from the schema I've just presented, desires only good and thus does good. So they only desire to do good things, and so they do good things. Now, there's an interesting further question of whether this kind of person is possible. Has anybody risen to this level, or maybe always been at this level, that they don't even have the bad desires? And perhaps a further question, which would be, if there is such a person, would they really morally be superior to a person who has to struggle against their bad desires, right? Is it better to never have struggled or to struggle and win out? Those are interesting questions, I say, but we have to set them to the side, because when we look at this schema, the top and bottom levels are fairly straightforward. Say what you will about this poor vicious person, but the archetype is fairly understandable. So too with the virtuous person. There might not be any actual virtuous people, but it's easy to kind of get what Aristotle's getting at. It's in the middle where most of us live, I should think, that we have some puzzles, especially at the level of the weak-willed person, the Akrasia person, and here's the puzzle. So we've touched on this earlier in the class, but you do many things in the course of a day, and a lot of the things that you're doing are not things that you choose to do. They're not actions you're performing. So right now you may be exerting downward pressure on your chair, assuming you're sitting. Your heart is beating. You're breathing. You might be, if you're in a room with other people, occupying space in someone's visual field. These are things you're doing, but you're not choosing to do them. But if we focus on actions, things that you choose to do, what is the locus of these actions? Historically, for many years, and also in our kind of contemporary thinking, the locus of those actions is the will. And the will, I'm going to define as the faculty that decides on and initiates action. The faculty that decides on and initiates action. So everything you're doing now, And you may not be doing too many things. I'm certainly not. I'm just talking and moving my hands, right? But that's because you will to do it. So the will says, I'm going to do this, and then moves your limbs to, or in my case, my mouth, right, to actually get you to do those things that you are doing. So all actions you perform come in some major sense from the will, okay? Which is fine, but what about cases of weakness of will? What about cases of akrasia? In these cases, here's the question. When you know something is wrong, why do you do it anyway? When you know something is wrong, why do you do it anyway? Now, at some level, you might say that's not a puzzle at all. You just will to do the wrong thing, right? I will to do good things, will to do bad things. So in this case, I will to do something I know is wrong. But that traditional analysis where the will decides on and initiates action doesn't work in these cases, because in cases of weakness of will, your will is dead set against exactly the thing that you're doing, right? So your will says, I shouldn't be doing this, and yet you do it. So we say your will is weak, which is fine. Maybe your will is weak, but what is the thing in that situation that is strong? What is making you do it? What's performing the action? And so the traditional analysis of action doesn't work in cases of weakness of will. So we ask this further question, what exactly is making you act? What is going on? So we need to go a little deeper. We have with human moral psychology to sort of pop the hood, as it were, and kind of look at what really is going on, what's going wrong in cases where you know something is wrong and you still do it. So that's the question we're going to be digging into in this module, and we'll look at a couple theories and try to adjudicate between them. So in the next video, we're going to look at Plato's theory. Thanks.